Hello, everyone, and welcome to Portland Cocktail Week Distance Learning. I am Brittany Leach-Johnson from Portland Cocktail Week, Lush Life Productions, Camp Run Amok, etc. And today I'm super excited because we're going to be talking about my favorite tequila since 2013. The first time I was ever introduced to Altos. It's been the reigning champ in my eyes. And to tell us more about the product, how it's made, the sustainability practices, all of the great things associated with Altos Tequila. We have Dre Masso, who is the co-creator of Altos Tequila, and also, because that one very big job is just not enough, head of bar innovation and creation for Potato Head Hotels and Beach Club in Bali. A little bit about why we're having this class today. Some of you who are watching will be very aware of this. Portland Cocktail Week and Altos Tequila have partnered up to host another round of this intensive cohort that's designed to equip students with the tools that they need to get their ethical businesses off the ground. So 50 bar professionals were selected for the cohort, and they'll be joining us each week for public classes just like this one, and private classes that are all led by the brightest minds in the sustainability and entrepreneurship space, from the hospitality industry all the way up to speechwriters who have had very prominent positions in the government. So a very exciting program in its entirety. But if you're not in the cohort, no worries. You'll be able to catch us here every Monday for the next couple of weeks. So today, Dre is going to be taking us all on an in-depth journey into the world of Altos Tequila. He'll explore the production practices behind these exceptional spirits, including how Altos Plata, Reposado, and Añejo are crafted from field to bottle. He'll also dive into the brand's sustainability efforts, emphasizing its commitment to eco-friendly practices. All of our cohort participants can taste all three expressions during this session, learning to identify the distinct tasting notes that make each tequila unique. But if you're not in the cohort, don't worry. This will live on our YouTube and Facebook pages forever. You can revisit this tasting portion anytime once you've grabbed yourself some Altos Tequila. Before I turn it over to Dre, the person with all of the knowledge you came here to get, just want to remind you of a few quick things. If you're in the cohort, you should have done this already, but if you're not in the cohort, or you are and you haven't done it already, make sure you head over to TohonaSociety.com. There you will be able to click on a cool banner and sign up for the brand new Tohona Society app. It has got so many great resources, expert talks, ways to connect with other bartenders that are also passionate about sustainability and ethical business practices. So make sure you head that way. Definitely love having the app myself, so I think you will too. Make sure you like us on Facebook so that you can keep up with what we're doing, what we've got going on. Obviously, if you're watching on Facebook, you already know this address, but there you go. You can also follow us on YouTube. All of our classes are hosted on both, so you never miss a thing, no matter what platform you like best. And make sure you like, share, comment, especially if you're one of the cohort participants. Your comments are how I know to count you present. And I see there is already lots going on in the chat, so I'm going to be quiet and turn it over to Dre so he can tell you all about Altos Tequila.
Excellent, Brittany. Thank you very much, as always, for your support and for your great organization in putting all of these events together. So welcome, everyone. If I may, just a little bit of background, a little bit of my story. This year, I'm celebrating 31 years in this wonderful industry. I started at the age of 18. That was 1993 in London, in a little cocktail bar, whilst I was studying photography at college, and immediately realized that this was something that perhaps I could take further and certainly investigate more. So I put it about to kind of make it my business to find great bars and great bartenders. I then went to work in central London and worked in some great places. Some of those places, just to name a couple that were really significant for me, the Lab Bar in Soho. So that was around the year 2000. the lab, as well as being this kind of drinks laboratory, stood for the London Academy of Bartending. It was owned by a guy called Douglas Ankara. If you've come across the Porn Star Martini, well, that was Douglas. I was by his side when he created that drink. I also worked with Dick Bradsell in London. He's considered the godfather of certainly the London cocktail scene. He created the espresso martini, the bramble, the treacle, amongst many others. I made it my business to work with him. Now, the reason we're all here today is because in 2001, whilst I was working at the lab, I met a gentleman by the name of Julio Bermejo, who is and was the ambassador of tequila for the United States. A very charming Mexican-American chap who has this, this contagious passion, not just for everything tequila, and his main focus is 100% agave tequila, but also this kind of lust for life. I'd say he's a great ambassador for bartenders too, so he does a lot of traveling. And that's what he was doing in 2001. He was visiting London and visiting London bars, walked into the lab, and we got talking, basically. At that point in London, there weren't many 100% agave quality tequilas. Most of the bars were using regular or mixto tequila. We'll touch on that in a bit. And Julio invited me to an intimate tasting, if you like, a bunch of bartenders with a bunch of really good tequilas too. It was the first time I got the opportunity to sip and savor really good liquid, and we enjoyed it in this kind of tasting glass, which I love to drink and enjoy tequila from. And Julio, being Julio, at the end of the session said, if anyone wants to learn more about it, or more about the subject, come and see me in San Francisco. So Julio, with his family, the Bermejos, they run an institution, Tommy's Mexican restaurant in San Francisco. This year, they've reached or are about to reach 60 years in business, which is phenomenal. They have one of the biggest collections of tequila in any restaurant or bar outside of Mexico. And yeah, so I went and spent 6 months with Julio learning about the history and the production, the different families and the different producers. I would do odd jobs for him. If you ever met Julio, you've probably been given a t-shirt. I was making those t-shirts for him. And basically he was paying me in knowledge. So it was a pretty good setup. I then returned to the UK, and I just wanted what I had learned and what I had seen, as well as also visiting Mexico with Julio and a bunch of bartenders and writers. I just wanted to spread the word, and I wanted to be more and more involved. And I got asked with my business partner, Henry Besson, to write a book, a cocktail book dedicated to the most loved cocktail, the Margarita. And then that also led to me opening my own Mexican cantina in London. It was called Green and Red. That opened in 2005 to 2010. So we wouldn't be here today without the influence of Julio Bermejo. And I know that he has given this kind of ability and this passion and interest to so many bartenders that have then gone on to work in this brilliant industry. So I just wanted to kind of say, we're here because of Julio. And we've just recently spent some time with him and his family making a short documentary film, which will come out, hopefully, fingers crossed, in a few weeks. So we're targeting the 22nd of February, National Margarita Day. So watch this space. And that's something we did in conjunction with Altos Tequila. So to kickstart this presentation, a phrase that we used at the beginning was created by bartenders for bartenders. So myself and Henry at the time were bartenders in London, but we were learning about tequila. And I say it was a little kind of bunch of bartenders that we all had this same ambition, same passion to learn more about quality tequila, and doing a lot of work to bring it into London. So this was a good kind of 25 years ago that we started to do this, 25 years ago. And as I mentioned before, we didn't have much choice. And actually, when Julio came into the bar and asked me for a tequila cocktail, I reached for our house tequila. And it was kind of odd because we had premium vodka, gin, rum, whiskey, brandy, everything else but tequila. And he kind of stopped me in my tracks to say, no, I want you to use something of better quality. And we didn't have much on the back bar, but that's when we started to learn about it. Now, what we did have came with a higher price point. And when we finally got around to be involved with the production and the creation of Altos, one of our key targets was to have something that we could put into the bartender's hands, something that worked really well in everything kind of cocktailian, as well as being a good sipping tequila. And that's why from the beginning we use this kind of terminology of by bartenders for bartenders. I think it's gone beyond that now, that it's, I really want, anyone at home that likes to enjoy a good tequila or make a good margarita to kind of reach for Altos. The key thing was, the best liquid we could produce and the best value possible. And this presentation is going to kind of go through different parts of the procedure and explain how we were able to do that. Someone else to mention that is as key as Julio and as key as Henry is a gentleman who I was with here this morning at the distillery. His name's Jesus Hernandez. He's the master distiller, and he's been in the spirits business for 40 years. Last year at a drinks business ceremony in London, he got awarded a lifetime achievement. He spent about a good 20 years in America working in the world of whiskeys, and then came back to Mexico and started working back with tequila. And he was instrumental in the design of this distillery. And I'll show you some other aspects of our production where, after years, I learned that, he either had a hand in designing or putting it together or coming up with the ideas. So he really is a kind of quiet genius. He's a very noble man. But Jesus was really key, not only because he had a good understanding of this business, but also when we were introduced to Jesus, so this would have been around 2005 for the first time. And we were introduced because we were doing lots in the world of tequila, but also being British, we were working with a lot of British Pernod Ricard brands. So Jameson's from Ireland, Plymouth, Beefeater, Chivas, etc. And when they heard that we were these kind of tequila nerds, if you like, we were invited to come and speak with Jesus. And a couple of years later, 2007, we were brought to the distillery when Jesus was working on something new. And it was without any kind of real plan, but as soon as we got chatting with Jesus, we could see that he had this real open mind to explore what bartenders wanted to do with tequila. So he had heard that it was becoming more of a cocktail ingredient, more accessible, if you like, more popular. And he would approach Henry and I to say, okay, what kind of tequila profile do you look for in this tequila? So back in 2007, I think what we did was one of the first collaborations of its kind. I know since I've seen examples of this brilliant collaboration between distiller and bartender, but at that point, it's the first that I had experienced. And really, it was down to the generosity of Jesus Hernandez. So just wanted to kind of name check him. He's the hero in all of this, and I can't thank him enough for allowing our dreams to come true. Anyway, let's talk more about agave. So as it says here, that there are more than 300 varieties of the terroir, if you like, for growing this type of succulent plant. A lot of those agaves are endemic. They're native to this part of the world, and in particular to Mexico. So today is really all about the agave, and we're going to zone into one particular type of agave because, as you probably know, for making tequila, we can only use one type of agave, one of the 300 plus, and that's the blue agave. So there was a German botanist called Franz Weber that was trialing and testing lots of different agaves to see the sugars that were produced and also the taste profile. And he determined that the blue agave was the preferred variety for producing this kind of distilled liquid. So this diagram shows the breakdown. Actually, this is a mother plant because you can see that there's a flowering stem coming out. This is called the coyote. And when the blue agave reaches its full cycle, if you like, full maturity, it will naturally start to release its energy through this coyote. The male plants won't do that, but something the male plants will do, or both sexes will do, is produce kids. So on the right-hand side, you've got a hijuelo, And after about 2 years, the parent agave plant will start to produce off of the rhizomes little baby agaves. You can see that the plant isn't buried deep into the soil. It sits very delicately in the soil with loose rhizomes. It's protected by these defensive, sharp penca leaves, which have a very short, sharp point to them. Yes, as I said, will protect the plant over its term, which on average for us is about 6 years. There are distilleries that are using agaves that are much younger, 3 and 4 years. But it's not a kind of blanket cultivation or blanket harvesting. The farmers that work in the fields will hand pick when these agaves are ready. So here it says 5, we see 5, 6, sometimes 7 or 8 years. In the world of tequila, in the world of mezcal, we're seeing different types of agaves that can take many more years to reach full maturity. So that's a little illustration of the agave. What you do have in the stem, in the coyote, are the agave seeds, if you like. So historically, birds or bats would have perhaps collected these seeds and then left them in a different part of the soil. And actually, if you were to plant an agave from a tiny seed, it would take a lot longer than 6 years. So we're talking about 6 years from replanting these hijuelos. The farmers do something that's pretty drastic, if you like. So they take them away from the parent, out of the soil, into the blazing heat, and leave them to stress for a month. Now, those that survive will be replanted, hungry and thirsty, and put back into the soil to kind of pick up and cherish all of those nutrients, and then will grow to be a really strong agave. Those that kind of don't make the grade will be left out of that process. So it's a good 6 years after it's been replanted, and that little baby hijuelo would have taken another kind of 2 years to grow. So it is a very long process. I'm emphasizing this because tequila comes with a price point that I think is significant, but there's a lot that goes into it, just starting with the agave. Now let's move forward to this. There's a few maps we're going to show you here. This shows that Mexico has a plethora of different distilled spirits, not just agave, but also sugarcane and different types of succulent plants. But yeah, it's kind of all about the region and what it's made from. Some expressions you would have heard of, obviously tequila and mezcal, and then we've got things like bacanora, sotol, and raicilla that is also up and coming at the moment. I think Mexico has more denomination of origin ingredients than any other country in the world. So not just its distilled spirits, but different types of cheeses and chilies. So it really is a wonderful place for taste and flavor. Ancient uses of this magical agave. So starting from the right, medicinal uses. They would have brewed some kind of tea that would have acted as an ailment, perhaps to soothe stomach pain, something like that, but also used as a great dental floss, great to clean the teeth, also for thatching, so making bags and roof tiles and that kind of thing. A great source of nutrition. So the cooked agave, which we will look at very shortly, whether that's done with fire or steam or boiled or whatever, once those sugars are released, it's this wonderful, delicious source of sweetener, full of minerals, full of nutrients and vitamins, and that has been enjoyed since the first Aztec or Olmecan came up with the idea to cook it in some way. And the agave has been explored and honored in many ways. If you look at ancient Aztec culture, it was the plant was revered. There was a goddess of the agave, and you see it in a lot of ancient drawings. So still popular today. So this map shows the United States of Mexico. There are 31 states. We already know that we're using a blue agave, but also what is fundamental is that we can only grow the plant and produce and make tequila in 5 allowed states of those 31 states. The one highlighted in yellow, in full yellow, is the state of Jalisco, where I am now. So I flew to Guadalajara, and then it's a 2-hour drive to where I am in the highlands. The highlands in Spanish is Los Altos, hence our name. If I drove in the other direction for about an hour and a half, I would reach Tequila Valley, where the town of Tequila is. And you can see from the highlighted area, so all of Jalisco is highlighted yellow, meaning you can make tequila in any part of Jalisco. And then you'll see that the surrounding states of Nayarit, Michoacan, and Guanajuato, actually it's just a small part that is highlighted yellow. There are parts that are bordering Jalisco. Again, it's showing you where the best agaves are growing. There is one state that is an exception to the rule, and that's Tamaulipas. I think there's only 1 or 2 distilleries in Tamaulipas and the other states outside of Jalisco. So we're talking about 95% of all tequilas produced in the state of Jalisco. If you're going to remember one, it's going to be Jalisco. This slide just shows you some differences between those 2 key areas. So Tequila Valley, sometimes misnamed as the lowlands. It's certainly lower than the highlands, but it ain't low. 1,500 meters above sea level versus where we are at approximately 2,000 meters above sea level. The soil color is very different. We have this rich, rusty, red, full of iron soil in the highlands. It's evident when you get here. And in Tequila Valley, it's got that more traditional brown, earthy look to it. What we have in the highlands, which produces a bigger agave, is a more kind of drastic change in temperature and weather scenario. So where we are, we have very hot days and very cold nights. That makes some reaction with the plant, and also a more concentrated sugar content, more concentrated taste profile too. So, as a generalization, the agaves in the highlands are about 10 kilograms on average, heavier than the agaves of Tequila Valley. And then these are generalizations, and sometimes not always the case, but we talk about a more sweeter, fruit-forward, floral agave profile in the highlands. And in tequila, you might be accustomed to something that has an earthier, perhaps more spicier vegetal profile. But then it gets confusing because a lot of those distilleries in Tequila Valley will use of its quality is used in tequila production all over the place. So there's some differences, but sometimes, there are lots of other aspects that can play a part, and it's really the hand of the maker as well that can influence the final results. Okay, a couple of little companies, big companies, entities that have worked side by side with tequila for a good kind of 40 years or so, starting off with the CRT, the Tequila Regulatory Council. In simple terms, they're kind of like the tequila police. So they will manage or keep an eye on how your business is managed on a daily basis. So they take trips to the fields to check that everything is in order, and then they will visit your distillery. In the case of big distilleries, like Altos and Olmeca, as an example, we will have someone stationed from the CRT, fixed, stationed every day. So they will be in the offices, in the aging facilities, looking at the stills, the fermentation, and everything else. So as I kind of mentioned, the kind of tequila police, they're keeping an eye on how the business is operating and making sure that we're following their rules. And tequila comes with a whole load of rules. They're normas, if you like. Now, on the other side, you've got the CNIT, the Cámara Nacional, who are really helping with the future of tequila. So they take a big part in looking at the marketing and the publicity of tequila, but also trying to forecast, which is an almost impossible thing, how tequila is going to look in the future. Now, we've already talked about a 6-year wait. It's hard to calculate with growth how things are going to look in 6 years. And that's why I think there is always this cycle of tequila's price and the price of agave fluctuating a lot, reaching significant highs and then going down to a much lower price point. They've got a hard job, and tequila and other agave spirits have really risen to fame in certainly the last 10, 15 years. I started coming here 20 years ago. There were roughly 100 distilleries. Now in 2025, there are more than 200 tequila distilleries. There are more than 1,500 brands of tequila. And I'm not talking Añejo, Reposado, Blanco. I'm not talking varieties. I'm talking about names of different tequila brands. And then we've had, celebrity endorsement and everything else. So, they've got a hard task to try and figure out how tequila is going to be looking in years to come. Okay, so two different categories. My main focus, my main passion is certainly 100% agave tequila. That's what Altos is. But we started off making a mixto or regular tequila called Olmeca. That started in 1967, so it's been going a good while. That started in Tequila Valley, so our facilities were in the valley, in the lower lands, if you like. We moved here 27 years ago. We had the chance to take over a distillery that Jesus designed with an architect, put the plans together. It was actually designed for another tequila brand who opted out in the end. And because of the agaves that are here, because of this, brand spanking new, creme de la creme facilities and the water that's available here, they chose to move everything to these facilities. So what is Olmeca? So Olmeca is a mixto or regular tequila. Sometimes the locals here don't like to hear the word mixto because I don't know, maybe it sounds kind of inferior in some ways. So they just call it tequila or regular tequila. So back to the agave plant. Sugars from the agave, we've got to use at least 51% sugars from the agave, and the remaining 49% can come from other sugar sources. So it could be another agave, it could be sugarcane, beet, etc. Obviously, we haven't got the truest expression of the agave plant in that kind of liquid. I say Olmeca is still pretty good regular tequila. I factored it in occasionally into tequila tastings, which are more focused on 100% agave tequila, and it does pretty well. And we have some big markets like South Africa and Turkey, previously in Russia too, where Olmeca's been a huge success. And I guess I'm partly to blame with Altos because, we wanted to produce something that was the truest expression possible, and Altos is 100% agave. And when we came up with this idea, really the bread and butter was Olmeca, and we were creating something that was more labor intensive, was more expensive to make. I didn't want to put a big price tag on it because I wanted us to use it, but I wanted it to be great quality. And Jesus allowed us to do that. But I remember him saying, well, it's okay, because we always have Olmeca, which is, as I said, the one that's making the money for the majority of the world, and now Altos has overtaken Olmeca, so I'm partly to blame for that. So I'm sorry, Jesus, if you're listening. So yeah, we're going to focus on 100% agave tequila, and I'm going to explain also how and why Altos is different, and what are the key points of difference too. So before we go into that, I've already mentioned a couple of these figures. These are just some fun stacks. Now, interestingly, where I am in Mexico, it's not always easy to get a great margarita. I've already mentioned that, in 2005, when I was asked to write a book dedicated to the margarita, I knew then we had evidence that it was the biggest selling cocktail, certainly in America, and it still is today, or variations of it. In Mexico, 40% of all tequila is enjoyed via the vehicle of a paloma, which has now, also had equal fame. We're seeing beautiful variations of the paloma. But if we go back a good 40 or so years, Mexico for a long time has had their national soda, or their national equivalent of Coca-Cola, if you like. So there are a few versions. Fresca's one, Squirt's another. And in short, it's this wonderful, tasty grapefruit lime, little bit of sugar, sparkling soda. And it can be found anywhere. And that means the Paloma can be found anywhere, whether it's a little, old school cantina, cafe, restaurant, nightclub. It's an easy combination of, this local soda with a local tequila as well. Mexicans put salt and lime in everything. So salt rim, squeeze a lime, and there you have it. Now we're making more crafted versions of it, but I know that I could step out and get a Paloma anywhere. Back to the Margarita. I love this number, and who knows if it's true, but I love to use it as well. Americans enjoying 185,000 margaritas on average every hour. Thank you. The majority of tequila does go to the United States. 80% of all tequila produced heads in your direction, and tequila has overtaken consumption of American whiskey. It is due to overtake some of the other popular spirits like vodka, gin, and rum pretty soon. I mentioned that there are 1,500 brands of tequila. Something that we're going to touch on in a second is a very old school process called the Tahona method. We also mentioned the Tahona Society. I'll fill you in on what all of that means, but the Tahona Society is a traditional way of crushing the agave. It goes back more than 500 years, but only 15 brands are using that technique. So that shows one of our unique points, if you like, is that we're 1% of all tequila production using that old method. Okay. So we're in Arandas, in the town of Arandas. We've already spoken about kind of the altitude. The distillery was built here in 1997. I mentioned it was designed for another brand. Actually, it was designed for Patron. So the company pre-Pernod Ricard, Seagrams, were managing the distribution of Patron and also the success of Patron. And the idea was that, to really facilitate the direction it was going and the numbers, that they would build their own distillery. But for whatever reason, it didn't happen, but we were left with this great distillery. Let's look at this production process in more detail. Starting off with the farmers in the field, the jimadores. The process is called to jimar. That word relates to like deep breath, which is what I'm kind of doing now, going at 50 miles an hour through this presentation, struggling to breathe. But it is a very, very hard, labor-intensive process. As you can see, this is done by hand using an ancient Arabic tool called the koa. It's a bit like one of those, tools that's used to add pizza to the wood burning ovens. But this tool is incredibly sharp. So it's sharpened religiously throughout that session. And their session will start early, 5, 6 a.m., because it gets so hot, and they're going to have to stop about 1 or 2 p.m. If you've ever had the chance or the experience in an agave field, which is a great thing to do, a little bit of work experience out in the fields. I talked about the leaves. So you take off the pencas to reveal this wonderful, well, when they do it, this wonderful piña, Spanish word for pineapple. For us, we're talking on average about 35 kilograms. So these are big piñas. I said when they do it, it's nice and smooth. For myself, whenever I've tried, or with the bartenders that we've taken to the fields, 1, it takes a long time. 2, they're all out of breath. And 3, it's never this beautifully shaved, round or oval shaped piña. Normally it's jagged and many sides. So there's appreciation to the jimadores without a doubt. And they're harvesting approximately 200 of these agaves per session. Something that we like to do, and I think a lot of distilleries also like to do, but it isn't essential. You could cook whatever you give the distillery. But in the core, something that's found is called the cogollo. This has a sour taste to it, a bit like an apple. The outside is crisp and sweet and delicious and citrusy, and the inside, where the seeds are, is more sour. So we choose to remove the cogollo just to improve the taste profile. So these agaves are taken to the distillery. They are then chopped into equal size portions. So we have equal cooking. And in the case of Altos, And Altos is a blend. Just kind of keep that in your head for a second. It's a blend of two different processes. But everything we use comes from the highlands. Everything is cooked in the same way, using steam. And it's a process that will take a good couple of days, from turning on these brick ovens to then switching it off and allowing the agaves to naturally cool before we extract the juices. It's a good 2-day process. If you ever get the chance, or have had the chance, because this process is all about converting starches to sugars, and the sugars that are revealed are incredibly sweet. Descriptors that I've come across in the past when people talk about cooked agave: honey, caramel, treacle, figs, cooked vegetables or barbecued vegetables, stoned fruit, amongst many. One way to get close to that is perhaps taste a little bit of agave syrup that you probably have in your bars. That will give you an indication, but there's nothing like taking, a good strip of cooked agave from the oven and chewing on the juices. You eat it the same way as you eat sugar canes. You're left with the kind of quenched fibers, if you like, but all the juices have been consumed. It's utterly delicious. There are a couple of other processes in the world of Olmeca, as an example. We use an autoclave. Acts like a pressure cooker, stainless steel. We can cut the cooking time down to to about 12 hours or so. So it's much quicker. They're much bigger vessels as well. And there's also something in the industry called a diffuser, which we don't use. We don't have a diffuser. Someone just said kind of that resting time like a steak. I think when you cook anything, slow and low is the best way forward. And what's really key, because I've tasted agave from the autoclave, and it's still delicious. It has a different flavor profile. It's very interesting. But what you'll see is that it's cooked perhaps more on the outside and still cooked, but less on the inside. Whereas when we're cooking slow and low, we have this even cooking throughout the agave. So that was our preferred thing. And talking about our preferred thing, when we started talking with Jesus, Henry and I, and what we could do, or which bits of production we could tap into, we were certainly romantic about it, and we wanted to explore the most traditional methods as much as possible. There were other things that we had seen in other factories, other distilleries, and when we proposed those to Jesus, he always had an answer. I'll give you some of those answers when we get to them, but when it comes to extracting the juice, I mentioned we're a blend of two different processes. So at this point, they go their separate ways. The Tahona wheel, which I mentioned, or Tahona stone, which sits in a pit, and that 2-ton volcanic rock will gently push out those juices from the fibers. This is really slow. I akin this to like the first press or premier press, so the best juices are coming out. It's not as efficient as other methods, and also it requires someone to go in there and kind of keep pulling the fibers. Traditionally, this would have been pulled around by some kind of animal, either a mule or donkey or a horse. Jesus designed the first electric mule, so that powers our stone, pulls and pushes it around, and it imitates the speed of a mule. But I've heard Jesus say this before: if you have animals working in your distillery or in your crushing area, not only is it not great for the animal, but it comes with everything else that those animals will bring with them. So if they need to go to the toilet, they aren't given a break. Everything happens in situ, and it wasn't part of the flavor profile that he wanted to incorporate. Anyway, Jesus, I said, is amazing. He studied architecture. He has a really good understanding of engineering and design. And this is something that came out years later. He helped to design that electric mule. So process number one is the Tahona stone. I'd say a more gentle, wholesome flavors come out of this process. We also use a roller mill or molino. Newer process, still goes back a good 200 years. In the same way, sugarcane will be squeezed to extract juices. The roller mill will push through those agave fibers. With the addition of hot water, we're getting out a lot more of those agave juices. So two different processes that at this point and for the rest of the production go their separate ways. So the next step in production is fermentation. By cooking, we converted starches to sugars. Fermentation converts sugars into alcohol. There's a few things that we need here. You need some time. Temperature is a factor. Water will be added to it. You need those initial sugars, but you need some kind of bacteria. You need yeast to make that conversion. Now, this is coming back to me asking Jesus about what we could do. And when it came to talking about yeasts, something that he tried with his team was lots of different types of yeast. So you can use bread, cider, beer, wine, champagne, etc. And he tried all of those. And someone in the lab said, you know, we could extract a bacteria, we could extract a yeast strain from the actual blue agave plant. Why don't we do that and test it out? He has that philosophy with everything, which is, yes, let's test it out. And what they noticed was the end result really showed off the agave profile. Many people talk about the type of yeast could be akin to your thumbprint, or it could be your blueprint to your end result too. But it can really give you something that is unique to your flavor profile. So yes, it's a natural yeast taken from the blue agave, and we have that under lock and key. Not only here in Mexico, but at headquarters in Paris, and we're using that same yeast strain time after time. So again, this is a process that will take a couple of days to kind of work its magic. Two different fermentations. With the Tahona liquid, we leave those agave fibers in there as part of the process. Not many people do this. With the roller mill, which will anyway produce a fresher, more vibrant style of tequila, we keep those fibers filtered out of that process, so it's cleaner there. The reason why a lot of people don't add fibers during fermentation, because it's difficult and it's a dirty process. It's difficult to clean, and it just adds more work to the whole process. But we discovered that was a really interesting flavor profile that we could get out of that, so we go with that. So another question I had said to Jesus was, I've seen these wooden fermentation tanks at different distilleries, and I love what they're making, and the romantic in me was like, that seems really cool. Now, Olmeca, when it was in Tequila Valley and when it moved to the highlands, we were using wooden fermentation vats. So Jesus had an experience with this. He had the knowledge and the know-how, and he said, Dre, it was interesting, but it was a different kind of interesting every time. And he's someone that loves consistency, and he wanted to make sure that the product was the same every time. And also, wood can collect other types of bacteria. It's a difficult material to clean. So with Jesus, it's always like consistency, continuity. It's got to be the same every single time. So I kind of love him for that. I always throw questions at him, and he's always got a better answer for me. But anyway, fermentation, two different fermentations. We're seeing an alcoholic product after fermentation, which is like a beer. So we're talking 6-7% ABV, and then we take it to distillation. When Jesus was living in the States, in California, working in the world of whiskey, he was using very similar copper alembic stills. And then when building this distillery, that was his recommendation. They're considered the best kind of stills in the industry. Copper is particularly good. Often ask this question to the audience, and I have a few things that come back. Control of temperature might be something. And then people talk about flavors, either kind of keeping things in or keeping them out. Now, that's certainly the case. But one thing that it's particularly good at is extracting sulfur. And you can see that when you empty the liquid from the still, it has almost a green mark on the inner layer of that still, which we then obviously clean and wipe away. But those tastes that relate or can be related to sulfur aren't very pleasing. Sometimes they're kind of overly salty or even eggy. And again, that wasn't a profile that we wanted to have in our recipe. So they're quite moderate in size. We have different sizes. The Tahona liquid will go through the smaller copper alembic stills, still keeping those agave fibers inside, so making it another kind of task for the team here to clean those afterwards. And the roller mill will go through slightly bigger stills, and we're looking for a cleaner liquid. So going back to the beginning, when we met with Jesus here, he had also this vision of creating something new. And the reason for that is because he had launched something, and if you ever see it, please buy a bottle because it's delicious. It's called Tezon.
Sounds like we may have a bit of a fire alarm situation. Hopefully it's a drill and nothing else. We're going to wait just a second for Dre to get away from that noise so that we can get to the end of production. And then I saw there was a couple of questions that came in. We'll pop those up before we move into the tasting portion. And yes, I am certain there's an entire team of people checking on the tequila right now to make sure it's safe. And this conversation was indeed too hot. So all of this tequila talk triggered the fire alarm. Dre, you just let us know when you're at a place where you are safe, one, and you can talk more about distillation, and we'll get back into it.
Yeah, just get. It stopped. So there was. It stopped, but there are people coming out. Anyway, okay. So can you hear me? Okay, where I am now.
Yes.
Okay. So let's see what happens. This happened this morning, and then we had to kind of do get in line and everything else. It seems to be slightly different now. Let me just see. ¿Puedo entrar otra vez? Okay, so I'm being told I can go back in.
Oh, well, I'm glad that everyone is safe, especially safe enough for you to go back into the building. But this is the magic of life.
While I'm here, this is the entrance
things happen, things come up.
This is the entrance to the distillery. It was recently redesigned about 6 years ago. We have hotel rooms upstairs too, each with a different theme, like distiller, fermenting, himador, etc. I'm going to take you back in here. This is our tasting room. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Apologies. But yeah, I think we're also close to tasting the liquid. We're not far off. Okay. So yeah, distillation. Distillation happens twice. After the first distillation, we have something that is around 25% ABV. That's called ordinario. And then after the second distillation, we have something that is around 55% ABV. So that's not a really high alcohol content in comparison. Spirits distilled to a high level to get to bottle strength. The story that I was telling before was, oh yeah, if you ever see it, Tezon. So Tezon was launched in 2003. It was one of those tequilas that reached the UK. We loved it. We thought the taste profile was super interesting, but it came with a really high price point. So imagine 22 years ago, I'd say that was certainly ahead of its time. It might be something that we do in the future, although that name has been sold to someone else, just the licensing of the name. But what Tezon was 100% agave tequila, but also 100% Tahona liquid. So at every point today when I've said, okay, we're going to crush it separately, ferment separately, distill separately, in-house we still call that Tezon, and there's a little bit of Tezon in every bottle of Altos. But like I said, it's a blend, so we blend that with our Molino liquid as well. And when we came into the mix, Jesus was trying different blends, different ratios of those two liquids. And we started off by tasting them separately. And there was a significant difference. And we've done tastings with bartenders before, where not only could they taste the difference, half the group would say, I prefer the Molino, and half the group would say, I prefer the Tahona. So we thought, as I guess cocktailians, that let's mix the two together and have the best of both worlds. And that was our process. To bring it kind of round full circle, because I had spent time with Julio and at Tommy's Mexican restaurant, I brought the Tommy's Margarita to the UK really because I wanted to drink it selfishly. I went to bars and said, look, can you use agave? Can you use fresh limes? Can you use 100% agave tequila? I didn't know that I had put a name to it. Julio credits me as calling it Tommy's Margarita, but that it was kind of like an obvious thing. For them, it was just their house margarita. But I refer to it as the Tommy's Margarita, and you know, it would have got to its fame anyway, but certainly in the UK, I was insisting people would put it on menus. So my point is, every blend we tried and we tasted it in glasses like this, we then went to the bar and tasted it in a Tommy's Margarita to make sure that it worked well. And that's what we came up with. So at this point, we've gone through all the processes from harvesting to reaching this point. It's taken another 6 or 7 days. It's a long process. And what we have here, after a little bit of filtration and a little bit of water, well water that's on site, we have Altos Blanco. So if you have some to taste today, this is our opportunity, if you haven't already, to pour yourself a little taster. And I'm going to go.
Dre,
go on. Yeah.
Before we get to the tasting part, there are a couple of questions in the chat, and now I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Talking about the Tommy's Margarita, when you were spreading the Tommy's Margarita gospel in the UK, did you tell them that they had to get blenders?
No. I wish I had. So for those of you who haven't seen, so Julio is respectfully quite unconventional. So you'll see in the documentary, we'll release it onto the new Tahona Society app as well, so you can check it out there. We've got Julio talking for 2 hours. We've got his mum talking for an hour. At the moment, we've edited it down to an hour and 50, and then we're going to do some clippets from it. But Julio didn't have any bartending experience. He worked in that restaurant from the age of 5 or 6, delivering a plate of salad to a table. He talks about de-skinning pinto beans before you could buy clean pinto beans, and all of these like manual tasks. All of his siblings had to be involved in some way. And one day he kind of said, "Oh, maybe I'll work on the bar," kind of thing. At a point where they had just a few tequilas, and he said, "Well, with this Mexican bar, we need to improve on that." And that's when he started to expand. They, improve the quality of tequila, improve the quality of their margarita. Also, coincidentally, a time when someone came in and said, "Here's agave syrup." Julio chose to take out triple sec, which has an orange taste to it. He wanted to showcase the limes and the tequila, so agave syrup helped with that. If it's almost embarrassing stepping behind Tommy's bar because it doesn't have the stations that we're used to. It's got a big sink, if you like, full of ice. There are no shakers on the bar. He has them stashed away if you need them. But they were making blended margaritas from early on. And when he looked at improving it, he didn't have shakers. So for him, it was like, okay, we're definitely using hand squeezed limes to order. That's what they did anyway. And then we're using a better tequila. We're using a better sweetening aspect to it. And then he just decided to kind of use the blender cup to throw from one to the other, and then pour it in a glass that also I don't think I've seen anywhere else. I don't know where he got these glasses, but it's almost like a tumbler sat on a stem, almost like a square wine glass. But I love that he only sells one cocktail. Everyone in the bar is drinking this cocktail. Everyone in the bar is double parked, Tommy's and a taster, yes, you can have it blended, but nearly everyone is drinking it thrown on the rocks. He doesn't really go for the salt. He says that salt and pepper are condiments that can improve, enhance, or disguise something, and he didn't want to do that. So thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, when I came to London, because we were kind of, we were in some ways articulate about how we were making drinks. We were happy with it with the shaker, but actually what you get with this,
it's really impressive.
Well, you can make many at the
it's
same
impressive
time.
to watch him do it.
Yeah, you can make,
and it's so smart because the whole bar can be full and everybody's got a drink in their hand. So just not enough good words about Julio, I guess.
It's productive,
and then,
but also you don't get a big dilution. There's sense to it. Okay.
He's the best. But there are two more questions from this section because I know we're moving into the tasting. One is from the cooking section. Brian wants to know how much flavor difference and a bit more about the flavor difference between the agaves that are cooked in the oven and in the autoclaves. It's specifically for your production. I know there are some others that only use one or the other. So
and there's another type of sugar extraction, which I'll talk about in a second. So I think they're notable, and this can also vary from distillery to distillery. But you certainly get this more wholesome, rustic. If you think about colors, they're warmer colors when it comes to using these brick ovens, and it's a lighter profile with the autoclave. We still get good cooked agave notes with our expressions using autoclave, but for me it feels kind of younger and brighter, if you like. Now the third way is the diffuser. Don't have a diffuser. It's a huge machine that will actually not cook the agave. It will extract the raw juice, and with a chemical interaction, it will to a certain degree cook and ferment those juices, but it's not cooking the agave. What you find with a diffuser is certainly different flavor profile because it becomes a lot more neutral. So for anyone that wants a good agave profile, then you should be looking at the first two forms of cooking. And that's certainly something we wanted. We wanted to have a margarita and taste, the bold character of tequila. We're seeing a lot of new tequilas come into the world that are super smooth. We wanted to kind of champion the agave as much as possible. So, good question.
Well, I'm going to ask May's question, which is related to milling, and then I'm going to go backstage again so that y'all can get ready to taste your Altos Tequila. May has questions about the materials in this Tahona. Are all Tahonas made out of a specific kind of stone, or do you think that changing the stone composite would change the flavor of the end product?
Oh, that's really interesting. I don't think I've come across that question before, though I've probably, in the back of my mind, thought about it. There'd be a sense that that volcanic rock works very, very well. And if you look at the Mexican kitchens, the morcajuete, or the pestle and mortar, is made out of the same thing. It's quite porous. It's not smooth, and I think that has something to do with also that jagged edge, has something to do with the treatment of the agave. And I've also seen similar types of rock being used in the world of olive oil as well. I've never come across a different type of material. It could be interesting to see, another type of rock or marble or anything else. What I do know though is that they are extremely durable as well. So that could also be part of the strategy. When this distillery was built, so 1907, this is a 2-ton volcanic rock stone. It takes a long time to make. So they made 2 at the beginning, considering that perhaps at some point that stone wheel is going to break and they need to replace it. And the second one still sits almost where I was a second ago. You may have even seen it in the background. It's still in the front. It's never needed to be replaced. So I think there's something there about, it works very well. There's a history of it, but they're incredibly durable.
All right. Well, I don't want to hold up the tasting portion any longer, so I don't want everybody to be mad at me because they can't taste their Altos Tequila yet. So I'm going to stop asking questions for a while and let you get to that.
Okay. So I did say distillation, so it happens twice. We've used copper lembic stills. Filtration, just to break this down. I mean, this is often not showed in a presentation, but the liquid is brought down to a colder temperature, becomes more viscous, and then passed through, just these very, very fine sheets. And it's just, if there's an alien particle in there, just making sure we've got a clean liquid. But it's not a cloudy liquid that we're filtering. And the other thing that's probably worth mentioning, which could be on the tips of a few of your tongues, is additives. Now, when it comes to a Blanco tequila, in the world of 100% agave tequila, no additives whatsoever are allowed to be included in your liquid. 0. Now, that may come as some kind of a surprise, because there are Blancos in the market that have such a kind of, perhaps a very sweet forward profile or almost vanilla notes that people would assume, and perhaps it's true that something has been added, but we talked about the tequila police, the CRT at the beginning. They should be doing their jobs to making sure that isn't happening. So I can tell you honestly, so no additives in our Blanco. We will talk about something that we do add further down the line with our age statements, again for consistency. But this for me is the truest, purest expression of the agave plant and of what we're making. So we've waited a long time in soil, and then we've waited a long time in production. In the US, you're drinking at 40% ABV. In Mexico, I'm drinking it at 38. Also, to most of Europe, it's 38. It's very common to see and to enjoy tequilas in Mexico at 38. There are other reasons for it. Obviously, when you're moving around the world, the higher the tax, the more expensive it is. But in Mexico, it is very popular to drink tequila with food as a food partner, like you would a wine. It goes very well with lots of different dishes. So just having it at 38, I think works really well for me. But yeah, so with any tequila, and often with a group of bartenders or whoever's tasting, because if it's your first time, it can be intimidating, or you're looking for words, or you don't want to stand out. But when I talk about tequila, often you get some kind of citrus notes, perhaps some kind of spicy notes, perhaps something that's herbaceous, some kind of minerality. Those wonderful salty notes often come up, and then fruit. But fruit is this huge library of different flavors. So it could be, I've already talked about citrus, and within citrus, what kind of citrus can you get? But it could be stone fruit, tropical fruit, orchard fruits, etc. So we're going to smell and taste now, and I'm going to give you some key descriptors that I've picked up either myself or along the way when I've been with bartenders and managers, etc. Waiters who have shared their expressions. But so here are some of the things I get with Altos. When we talk about citrus, it's the fresher kind of citrus. So perhaps pomelo, grapefruit, lime, or lemon. I'd say for me, it's more the expressed oils from a lime peel. So a fresh citrus note, certainly there. Something that is really evident, I think, with all of these products is this cooked agave notes. And there's something sweet in there. Now, sugar alone doesn't really have a smell, but certainly cooked agave or honey does. They are represented there. Fresh herbs. So this could be cut grass, or things that I've heard are cilantro, mint, basil. I get sage, which has a slightly kind of funky herbaceous note to it. And I also think something that's quite similar to sage, is not a herb, but a eucalyptus leaf. So I get that kind of almost like woody herbaceous note there too. An element of minerality too. Certainly when we drink it, we're going to get a salty aspect there, but maybe on the nose too, a little bit of brine. And then what else do we hear? Almonds, so a lighter, sweeter nut profile. I think that's probably like the kind of key summary. There's the white flowers, lily or jasmine, or it's not white, but chamomile. So all of this is natural. All of this comes from different parts of the process. Fermentation gives loads to it. All of these kind of pastry, doughy notes can come from pastry. I think from the actual milling process, we have fresher and sweeter notes coming from different angles. And then distillation, we often see tropical notes come to it. So this is completely natural. If you haven't tasted it yet, now's your time. And it's time to see how it works in your mouth. If there's dialogue between smell and taste in your palate. And also, just to consider perhaps like the viscosity and how long it remains in your mouth. Does it keep going? Does it shut off really quickly? We were tasting some tequilas this morning that we have experimented in different barrels, Hungarian oak, Martell barrels, to French oak. And we found that we had an additional extra dryness and closure that happened pretty quickly. But I tasted that a good 20, 30 seconds ago. I think it still keeps going there. We've got chamomile and orange flower notes, really nice. If anyone wants to throw into the mix. Sometimes we hear like apple or pear drops. So these kind of more kind of fresh and sweet notes too. But yeah, I think that's a pretty good overall summary of some of the descriptors that I've enjoyed over the years. Other words that I hear sometimes, and sometimes you just need someone to kind of put it in your head and you get it. But there is a nice creamy texture there. So imagine like kind of creme brulee, custard. But yeah, so when we talked to Jesus about kind of tropical notes there from Thomas, got pineapple. Yeah, I think that's good. When we talked about, when I just think about tequilas as an ingredient, and for me, obviously, with Altos, what a great starting point to mix other things with, because I think so many other things can cling on to tequilas really well. So it can act as the foundation for so many good cocktails. And that's why, 20 years ago, it was hard, certainly in the UK, to see tequila on a cocktail menu, and I'd say now it dominates. I think we've learned how to use it, and we have an appreciation for it. Okay, so that's Blanco. I'm going to put that to the side. We then want to start looking. Here's a kind of flavor wheel that we put together. This is something that I'm going to change, because at the top you're going to see dirty water and vomit and fish. And I don't know, I think we could probably come up with some different descriptors there, but this kind of insinuates that there are different parts of the process that can give you different flavor profiles. And there's some interesting ones in there. This isn't specific to Altos, although some things apply. but yeah, tequila is kind of weird and wonderful, and looking at some things here like varnish and paint thinner and gasoline and soap and all sorts of things that can come up. I remember reading a book by a guy called Lance Cutler, The Tequila Lover's Guide to Mexico, I think it is, and he talks about this kind of when it rains and the pavement or the cement has this kind of new aroma to it, which I think is quite unique and enjoyable. But he mentioned that, and I remember then tasting and smelling tequilas and finding that. And he also talks about this kind of wet, soggy paper thing. These wouldn't be characteristics that I'd necessarily share with a guest, but I think over the years I've been able to pinpoint those occasionally. Anyway, we're talking about something that is pretty unique and can be pretty funky at the best of times. Okay, so just to summarize on the Blanco, we had, we didn't really talk about this, but green pepper, almost like could be like a jalapeno pepper, cracked peppercorn, I'd say white peppercorn, licorice, we've got saffron there, the floral notes, fruity notes there, all sorts. Herbaceous and vegetal, nutty, and then these kind of sweet profiles, and then the kind of baking notes too. All right. So after Blanco, we fall into the next categories that involve aging. Each level comes with different regulations and different requirements. Next one in line is the reposado, Spanish for reposed. Now you've got to rest in any size barrels for between 2 months and 12 months. There are, if we go back to Blanco, so Blanco, Plata, silver, white, all the same thing, unaged. You could, if you liked, rest in barrel for a short period just to mellow the product out. There are a couple of brands that do it. Herradura is one of them. We leave our liquid to rest in stainless steel vats just because it opens everything out and it allows the liquid just to get settled before you bottle it. So it's pretty common practice. With a reposado, it can be any size barrels I mentioned. And there are barrels in the industry that are known as pipons. They can be tens of thousands of liters in size. Now, the smaller the better. The more interaction between liquid and wood will happen in a smaller size barrels. We use ex-bourbon barrels with everything we do. They're 200 liters in size. Someone perhaps is thinking where they come from. In the past, we've worked with Jim Beam and Wild Turkey, also not bourbon, but Jack Daniels too. Jesus works with his team to, look at the quality of the barrels, the price of the barrels, but they're always 200 liters in size. When they get to the distillery, they are hot steam cleaned, charred if required, but it's not the flavor of the whiskey we're looking, it's the flavor of that white American oak with a charred finish that creates such a wonderful result. So 2 months to 12 months is the industry standard, and we will age for approximately 8 to 9 months. So we will collect, batches and batches of different reposado in different barrels. They're all 200 liters in size, all ex-bourbon. But some of those barrels were perhaps first-time use for us. Some of them could be on their 4th or 5th cycle and will give a different kind of result. The lesser used barrel will produce something that is heavier and woodier in flavor. So we will do it in a large scale and do a blending process. So not only are we blending Molino and Tahona, because we will age them separately, but we will also blending, a large quantity of barrels so that we can get a consistent profile. So that's our reposado. I'm going to go back to the topic of additives. So the 4 additives that can be used: some kind of sugar, and that sugar could be for sugar, or discovering a big vanilla note in your tequila. Perhaps that's what they've done. Glycerine, which is a byproduct of making alcohol. That will give you the perception of sweetness, but it will also give you viscosity. So it will make that liquid heavier. And then we move into the flavor of wood. So you could add flavor essence or wood essence to imitate something that's been aged for a long time. So you could age for 2 months, but then add lots of wood to it and then give the impression that it's a heavily aged product. And then lastly is caramel. So we use a little bit of caramel so that every bottle of Reposado and Añejo is the same color, bottle after bottle, no matter where you are enjoying it, whether it's Spain or Mexico or in the US or in the UK. Now, interestingly, caramel is referred to as something that's sweet, but the caramel that's added to it doesn't change the sweet profile whatsoever. And I discovered this for the first time when I visited the bodegas of a Colombian rum called Hechicera about 10 years ago. And the owner, Miguel Riascos, wanted to show what other people were doing. And he added sugar, and then he added something else, and then he added glycerine to show me the thickness, but he also added caramel, and the sweetness didn't change whatsoever, but you can correct or you can change your color grade. So, a little bit's added to it. I have had discussions with the team about I don't care if the bottle's a different color every time. It shows 100% that it is what it is. But for a big company like Pernod Ricard, it's got to be the same for the end consumer every time. So from a bartender's perspective, I was like, I'm okay if this, the 2024 edition is a little bit lighter to the 2025, but I got a good explanation there. So Reposado, if you have a chance, now's the time to pour yourself a wee dram, and then we'll dive in. What I love about these glasses is that it enables you to agitate, to swirl the liquid a little bit. I wouldn't overdo it. In a shot glass, you can still have a good tasting, but I find a lot of the aromas in particular are closed. So champagne glass works really well. Sherry glass is similar to this. So what are we looking for here? Is it the same? Is it different? Are we discovering a lot of those aromas and then flavors that we had before? I'd say yes and no. So I think we still got the element of cooked agave where we had fresher citrus before. I think that's changed. I think it's a sweeter citrus that could perhaps be orange or tangerine or satsuma or kumquat. And with that, the flavors that this magical wood can give, so that white American oak that we associate with bourbon, we're now starting to see. So more tropical notes. We're getting, perhaps a little bit of baking spices, cinnamon, orange work really well together there. So cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, star anise, maybe a little bit of cacao, slight hint. Whereas with the Blanco, I have pinpointed an almond. No, I'd say the nuttiness of the Reposado is different. I won't say it if someone wants to see what they discover here, but I'd say different type of nut profile there. Someone else is agreeing there that we've got these kind of bourbon notes and baked spices. Absolutely, clove on the nose, and things that you're saying and the names that are coming up, and that I've mentioned too, I think direct some of the cocktails that I make. So a lot of the cocktails I make with the Blanco reflect the flavors that we talked about, and I would use the Reposado accompanying other flavors that we talked about. Orange, baked spices, the nuttiness that I find is more of perhaps a roasted nut. Definitely stone fruits there. We've got stone fruit kernels, which are very particular. That's a good one. So maybe hazelnut, macadamia, which is this buttery note. Yeah, still cooked agave. On the Blanco, a saltiness there too. And then I think maybe less present here, but yeah, have a taste if you haven't already. Yeah, certainly stone fruits, that, dusty cinnamon powder. I'll taste it at the tip of my tongue. And then these warm, sweet citrus notes, like orange. And then, yeah, other baked spices. It kind of keeps giving. Okay, so it's Blanco and Reposado. I think we've got a little chart here that just outlines Plata, Silva, or Blanco, aged for less than 2 months, or bottled right after distillation, which is what most people do. We do see a little bit of aging, but it's a rare thing. Reposado, aged between 2 months. And here it hasn't got an end time, because I think with all of these, there isn't really an end time, but then you start reaching another category. So the industry standard is certainly 2 months to 12 months. Capacity not specified. So you could be aging in something that's massive, but we're using those small barrels. Okay, this is interesting. Just softer, smoother, sweeter, less peppery, less citrusy. Yeah, I think that's a good summary of the Reposado, compared to the Blanco, how it's just matured. Añejo, which we're going to go to next. So with an Añejo tequila, you cannot age in a barrel that's more than 600 liters in size. Again, we're using 200 liters. And then it's at least 12 months. And industry standard will go up to extra aged, which is... It's okay. Apologies. That must sound awful. So yeah, 1 to 3 years.
Honestly, good chance for me to ask you a Reposado question before we move on to the Añejo. Yeah. So kind of thank you, fire alarm, this one time, not thank you for the other times. But this is from Josh Seberg. So he feels like the trend has been towards heavier oak influence as part of the bourbonification. I did it, Seberg, of everything. But the notes in the Reposados seem really delicate. Was it a deliberate choice to keep kind of the oakiness on the milder side?
Yeah, I think specifically to what we're doing, that's very relevant, Josh. And an example of that, like the biggest example of that, is that we don't have an extra añejo. I don't think we ever will have an extra añejo, because those woody notes can then dominate the liquid so much that it's taking us away from this, bold agave forward tequila that we've always talked about. It's always been like part of our DNA. When you're seeing Jesus taste, he's always looking for that. Always. And we've done experiments with extra añejo, really great liquid. It's really delicious. There's certainly a time and a place for it. The more you age, or the heavier you age, it starts entering a place where other spirits are featured too, and that could be an aged rum or an aged whiskey or an aged brandy. They start to become a little bit closer. That is certainly a generalization, but it heads in that direction. So I think it's always been key for Jesus to find the balance, and he likes those notes certainly, but he doesn't want them to overwhelm our kind of classic style, traditional style tequila. So yeah, thanks for that question. Okay, so let's get on to the Añejo. 200 liter barrels in size. We could go up to 3 years. We age on average about 18 months. So I'd say it's kind of slightly less in between, like what we could do. If you have it, I hope you do. If not, it's something you could do another time. pour yourself. And we're going to go through the same process. This is certainly a different beast to where we started. I think there is still some dialogue between all three. It certainly for me ticks that Altos box, but this is very different. We don't make a lot of this. I'd say the majority goes to the US, and it's always difficult because it's part of my presentation, and I go to countries where they either don't have it or haven't seen it before. But yeah, let's dive in and have a smell. I think after this we have also a little flavor charts that will highlight what we found in the Reposado and the Añejo. In fact, I might take you there now. Blending I've mentioned before. That's our hero there, Jesus. The Reposado, so cooked agave, fresh sweet fruity notes, candied orange, tangerine zest, slight woody notes, hint of vanilla caramel, the other baked spices we talked about. Let's show you the Añejo wheel too, because it gets more grown up. It's kind of obvious the direction it's going, but you're going to start to see maybe some dark chocolate, not on here, but some coffee notes too. It's just there's more sophisticated, more mature flavors that you would expect. Maybe a bit of leather. Someone's there saying butterscotch. Yeah, that hits you. Yeah, so it's still tequila, but you can see that it's losing some of the identity that we had with the Blanco. So yeah, strong banana, nice tonka bean, brilliant. Black tea and caramel. So James, yeah, really nice descriptors there. Certainly get that kind of heavy brewed tea note. I like all of those flavors, and you know, I think that they're flavors that would work superbly well with this type of tequila if you chose to mix it. So without a doubt, you know, if we're talking about cocktails that are that way inclined, like Sazerac Old Fashioned, Manhattan, that's kind of where you'd be going with this. You know, we're a lot of these flavor profiles are ones we see in bourbon. Yeah, the butterscotch that you highlighted is definitely evident. Treacle. But the way they act and behave on the nose and on the palate, I think they act in a similar way. I still get a little bit of, maybe this is like, I'm going to say salt, but then like salted caramel in the Añejo that work very well together. James is smiling. That's good. That's a good sign. And I get questioned like, what's my favorite? What's my go-to? And I honestly bounce between one and the other. It depends on what I'm doing and what I'm making and where I am. And someone once told me that, and I don't, you know, I've used this before, but I don't think it's necessarily always the case. I think it was a term that we threw about quite a lot, that in the world of tequila, it does the opposite to any other spirit, where let's take a rum or a whiskey, that you might start off with a lighter rum, and then as you become more of a connoisseur and more lover of the category, your palate becomes more expensive because you start enjoying the more aged products. I've heard the reverse in the world of tequila, where, you know, you might start off by trying a Reposado or an Añejo, but the more into it you become and the more you are searching for those true agave flavors, then you're going to end up enjoying and drinking and searching for Blancos, which are the true representation of the plant. So in short, as you become more into it, the cheaper it gets. But that can go either way. I feel the Reposado and Añejo are great. I'm seeing some really good comments there, which is great feedback there too. Because we often, as a group, we don't talk a lot about the Añejo, partly because it's not available everywhere. But I think it's a great sipping liquid. Isn't it great to kind of have something that can give so much and not be harsh, and not be challenging, and leave you wanting more? So yeah, I think that's a summary of production. And if you have any other questions at this stage before we just look at a couple more slides on nice. So we had autumn and winter. Yeah, I get that. Okay, so let's look at the next kind of slide or so. We often get asked this, like, what are we doing behind the scenes? And so we launched Altos and the Tahona Society in 2009. The Tahona Society, for us, and this is credit to the team at House of Tequila. So within Pernod Ricard, we have House of Tequila that look after everything agave, not just tequila. See all the mezcals, the tequila portfolio. And we said that there's so much misconception and misinformation related to the world of tequila that when we launched Altos, we would love to do this training thing. We're going to call it Tahona Society because that seemed pretty important for us as something very traditional. And it was a chance for us to share information about Mexican culture and other agave spirits and different types of agave, and just dispel a lot of those stories and myths. So we launched the Tahona Society platform in 2009. We started off with a great little Margarita competition that evolved. If you look into something Brittany spoke about before, we have this biannual competition now where we give bartenders a chance to win a really great prize to kickstart their project or their business. The link that's come up there again. And if you look at the stories of what we've done so far, they're great stories where we've made a difference. But I think my point was, I launched it and then I went to work for this great company in Bali, Indonesia. And it was a company that started off as a beach club and then 2 hotels. They've just been placed number 21 world's best hotels. And in terms of what they do when it comes to making a positive impact is phenomenal. They have large facilities there and they're able to turn a lot of their waste into treasure, so to speak. So they make a lot of their amenities and soap dispensers and garbage, whatever, canisters from waste that they've collected. So they shred plastic and then they recondition it. Anyway, they have their own farms and they're composting, and it's all amazing. And I kind of rejoined the team in 2015 and spent some time with Jesus, saying, I'm doing all of this stuff, not me, I'm part of the team doing this great stuff with this company in Bali, and it seems like these are positive decisions that any business should be considering. And again, Jesus isn't one to shout and scream about the great stuff he does, but he proceeded to kind of tell me about different things that they were doing. And the first thing that there's a negative the treatment of agave. So once we've pulverized it and it's dried out, that's called bagazo or bagasse. And the pH has changed considerably and it becomes toxic. So if you were to throw that back into the soil or into rivers, which was happening in many cases with different distilleries, it would then kill off like the fish or the land and destroy the soil. So Jesus was the first here in Arandas to convert that material into compost. So we were doing it first on a small scale. He was then inviting other distilleries to bring their material so that we could do that conversion process. And then it can go back into the land. It now has got so big, we have off-site facilities, and we've replaced those composting facilities, so we're still doing it, but with solar panels. And I don't think I've seen solar panels in any other tequila distillery. It may be present or starting to be present, but 30% of our energy is powered by solar panels. We could do more. Maybe in the future, the government will allow us to do more, but at the moment, they're only permitting us to use 30% of that energy. Something that we noticed pretty early on. So, bartenders for bartenders, but then we had messages from bartenders in the US. So thanks to the US bartenders, that the bottle was really heavy. And there are many cases where bars would use the liter format because you're changing the liquid less. And we had this chunky bottle, and the bartenders were like, oh, it's so heavy. So we reduced the glass by 25%. So that was listening to our bartenders, but obviously that is a better positive impact decision on the whole process. And now today we have very little waste. On a monthly basis, the amount of waste that's created could fit into the boot of a car. So we're thinking about every aspect. So packaging is really important. Offsetting the carbon footprint in terms of how we deliver to the rest of the world when we can. It's done in a more ethical style, ethical method. But then also something else that we do, which I don't want to leave the camera, but it's in the room. It's in our gift shop. We have these limited edition bottles that are decorated by a local community called Huichol. And you may have seen Huichol art where tiny beads are either threaded or stuck onto a piece of art. So we've been working with them for more than 10 years. As we were scaling up to do more of this, we asked them to scale up too. We ensured that this would be a long-term process because we didn't want to do like a one-off, can you produce another 600 bottles and then we won't have that relationship with you. And this is an ongoing process where they've managed to increase. This is a dying skill, a dying art form, and we have these limited edition bottles that are either given to the market or we sell at the gift shop, or they're gifted for special occasions. But it's not just about giving more work. I mean, I think you will probably find that within the tahonasociety.com website and app. The relationship that we've had with the Huichol community, which has improved their community. It's improved education, their health, access to clean water, etc. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening within the distillery, but also on a sustainable level with the local communities of Mexico too. So they're doing wonderful things. I don't know if that's of any interest, but it is a question that often comes up in terms of what are we doing. And then we also have this cool positive impact competition that used to be a cocktail competition, but we laughed that we asked bartenders to create a sustainable cocktail where they're traveling around the world to make it that we may never see again. So in terms of endurability, it's the opposite of sustainable or sustainability. But we want to encourage bartenders to fulfill their dreams and come up with a great business concept, invest into it, and for them to keep going for years to come and make money from. So recap of the process. We start off with the same agave, the same jimadores. We own 60% of our farms, and the remaining 40% are with families that we've worked with for over 20 years. Everything's cooked in the same way, steam, brick ovens, and then they're separated. So crushed separately, fermented separately, distilled separately, filtered, and then in the case of the aged products, we also aged separately, and then blending happens at the end. And that, my friends, is the probably the longish version of Altos. Here are some key differences, but I think I've talked about all of those.
Well, it's never long enough when we're talking about Altos.
Oh, Brittany, thank you so much. And if anyone has any more questions.
Thank you. Any final questions? I know May was interested to know if the CRT or CNIT regulate any of y'all's like environmental commitments, or if that's something that's separate. I know that you all are going to be seeing Mary Jose tomorrow for your private class, and she's going to have some very specific information about sustainability initiatives across the Agave brands. So she might be the right person to answer that question, but it also could be Dre.
Oh, I didn't realize you have a chat with her tomorrow. Oh, she is the custodian of everything we're doing. I just scraped the surface. She has a much deeper understanding of it. As far as I'm aware, I don't think the CRT, there may be something, is really focusing on that. There may be something. There's something that came about, I want to say about 15 years ago, where there were initiatives like the BAT program, and what that means and what that relates to was the original authentic way of propagation was allowing the female plant to release its coyote flower, and for bats or birds to collect seeds from the buds, eat them, and then it would exit, and then they would naturally form the most natural process known. So there is something called the BAT program, where if you, I think it's something like 10% of your agaves to do that, then you could be classified as part of that, because some of your agaves are most likely growing in that traditional way. We explored that. We do leave them sometimes, but it wasn't a focus for us. There was an argument to say to really quantify it or justify it. So it wasn't something we looked at, but perhaps there are other initiatives similar to that Maria Jose can share.
And Mary Jose is the Sustainability and Responsibility Manager for Pernod Ricard. So she'll have the answer for everything, I'm pretty sure. She's really, really delightful. Josh, I see that you're asking about managing sustainability versus profitability. Valerie Kramos Hollins is going to spend a lot of time with you over the next few weeks, and she's going to have a ton of answers about that. And Thomas has a very specific tequila-related question.
Cool. Yeah. So good question. Thanks, Thomas, for the reminder, because it's always on my mind to talk about, and sometimes I forget because we don't do it. But in terms of sustainability, I think if you can correctly manage your business in let's forget the word sustainable, but use the word resourceful manner, more often than not, you can save yourself money. I know certainly working with that strategy in the venues in Bali, that we've been able to save money in areas. Sometimes there's an investment at the beginning. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents there. This Crystallino. For those of you who don't know, Crystallino will go through every part of the process that we talked about, including aging. And it could be a reposado or an añejo or an extra añejo. So, I bang on about the amount of time we have to wait to get our tequila in our hands. And then if you add to that aging, now Crystallino will take that aged product and filter it through carbon. And you end up with a cleaner, smoother, lighter in taste, but lighter in color end result. And no, we've never even experimented with Altos Crystallino. We have a Crystallino that we create for our sister brand Avion here, but with Altos we've never even thought about that, because, and this goes back to Jesus's philosophy of wanting to have an agave forward tequila. If you're filtering it, you're filtering a flavor profile which is taking away some of that key agave flavor, and there is certainly a market for Crystallino. there's certainly a new wave generation that is appreciating an easier to drink tequila. I get that. But with Altos, we have always said, and I don't know, someone else might come into the mix in the future and want to experiment, but we've never gone past Añejo, and we've never thought about Crystallino for the key reasons of we want to keep the DNA of this product, bold character, strong agave notes, traditional technique, traditional flavors, and great on its own or in a margarita.
You heard it here first, friends. So no need for the Crystallino over at Altos, because they're already making 3 really great expressions for you to enjoy. And for everyone who is interested in hearing Dre talk more about sustainability versus profitability, creative ideas to help your community and the environment while you're running bars and clubs and hotels and all kinds of things, Dre's going to talk a little bit about that next week, but we are going to wrap up this week because I know you all have had a little bit of tequila and now you probably have to go to work, which is awesome. So you're welcome. First of all, I want to say thank you, Dre. It's always such a pleasure to get to work with you. And thank you to Altos Tequila. It's really been so fun to work with a brand that I've been a fan of for such a long time, and to see their commitment in investing in all of you, in addition to investing in making such wonderful products for us all to enjoy. If you liked this class, which I know you did, go ahead and smash that like or love button. This is the one time of year I get to say that, like a YouTube influencer, and leave some love in the comments so that we know you had a good time. And if you want to see more classes like this one, you can follow Portland Cocktail Week on Facebook. We have one of those. You might be watching it on that. You could also follow us on YouTube. If you want to know what we are up to next, you can always check our Instagram. It'll probably be on Portland Cocktail Week. And if you want to know other stuff we're up to in the future, you can head over to Lush Life Productions on Instagram for all of our other crazy schemes. Don't forget to follow Tahona Society on Instagram. I bet some of those cool clips of Julio's documentary are going to end up there, so you don't want to miss that. In addition to over at tahonasociety.com. There's tons of great stuff on the website, but there's a big banner right on the front page where you can sign up for the app, and you'll have access to all kinds of resources and expert talks. So don't forget about that if you haven't done it yet. Dre also has the internet. So you can follow Dre on Instagram at Dre Masso and keep up with what he is up to and continue the agave and sustainability-based conversations there. And if you want to, you can follow me on the internet. I'm not as interesting as Dre, but I can tell you what time your next class is. So happy to do that here, there, in an email, whichever. And speaking of more classes, cohort participants, I'll see you for your private class tomorrow with Mary Jose. It's going to be a real treat. You're going to have a great time. And for everyone, you can tune in next Monday, February 24th, where Jen Oakley, Agave's ambassador for Pernod Ricard, will serve as your host from there on out. She's going to do a much better job, but she's a little under the weather today. But Jen will serve as your host. As Dre joins us again, we'll have Carlos Ramirez, who is in charge of all of the good things happening at House of Tequila. Jimmy Teasdale, who's a former Tahona Society competition winner. And Valerie Cremas-Hollins, who I've mentioned. Cohort participants, you're going to see a lot of Valerie, you lucky ducks. And they're going to explain what the Tahona Society is, why it's a natural extension of the ethos of Altos Tequila, how you can get involved in this process and apply for the Tahona Society Global Competition, which it's a biannual situation. In 2025, it's on. So time to think about your entries. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful Monday, and I will see y'all next week right here. Thank you, Dre.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Thanks for your time. Thanks for the great questions. Bye.